Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? Whew. Sorry for the 1 minute delay. I am solo tonight. Andrew could not make it. Unfortunately, he's sick, so it's just me tonight. Hopefully, that's okay with everybody. Do me a favor, let me know if the audio is good, because you just never know. And despite the fact I always try to make sure it's set up correct, sometimes I do things stupid. So just let me know if it sounds good or not. In the meantime, quick sound off on everybody that's in here. We got Dogbone, Jason, Jody, as always, David, Mike, Kevin, Mark at Northeast Bass Fishing, Drew, and Chris. And I got a thumbs up from Drew already on the audio quality. So that's a good thing. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. Sean Solo. Yeah, Andrew is sick, so he texted me this morning. He's like, not gonna be able to make it. Nigel, hi from Chicago. Sounds good to me. Awesome. Thank you, man. That's awesome to see people from halfway across the country tuning in. Always makes me feel good. So tonight's agenda, we are talking about cold water largemouth tips. And before I get into it, there's a couple things I do want to bring up. First and foremost, Ben's Tackle Shack in Leicester, Mass. They've got quite the selection of tackle down there. I've been talking about them for years. They've been one of my main sponsors for several years now. They are now trying to work on kind of revamping the website. For now, they've kind of simplified what they're doing, but they are moving forward with trying to improve it. And right now, we have a discount code that can be shared. Anybody can use it. So if you go to benstackleshack.com, you can get to the web store through there. And if you use the code, hang on, I got to make sure I get this right, because now I'm second guessing myself like an idiot. And I was right. Snover 15. So my last name, then 15 gets you 15% off anything online and in the store, I believe. I know at least online, so that's a good thing. Definitely online. If you're ever down in the area, I promise you will not be disappointed. They have so much stuff, not just freshwater fishing either. They actually have some saltwater stuff. They did have some hunting stuff. They're trying to get rid of that, or at least they're really trying to move inventory on that. They got some good beer in there right now too. So they've got a lot of good stuff going on at the store. Tons, and I mean tons of tackle. I've been there several times. Never been let down or disappointed by their selection and the variety of their selection. So highly recommend you make your way down there. But if not, go online, benstackleshack.com. Use Snover15. You get 15% off your order. It's going to go a long way, and I promise you it will help. And I did see another thing from Jody that I do want to throw up here, because there you go. This Saturday on the Connecticut River out of Hinsdale, from 7 to 3, there will be a tournament going on. It's put on by my buddy Sean Graves. I had him on. We were talking about all the, New Hampshire's attempted approach at trying to ban/limit bass fishing tournaments in the state. Wicked good dude, puts on a bunch of really, really good tournaments. I think I fished one of his, but I've been in a bunch of tournaments with him. He's just a wicked awesome guy, and everything he does a really, really good job with it as well. And I've heard nothing but good things about those tournaments. So if you want to go there and donate to Jody, because I believe he'll be there, you're welcome to do that. The Connecticut River can be really fun this time of the year too. So that's, if you're interested, you're looking for another derb to jump into last minute, that's the place to be. Now, last but not least, for those that are here, thank you very much. Appreciate you as always. Do me a favor, drop a like, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, doesn't matter. Kind of on that social media aspect of things, like this on engagement, which don't necessarily care, but I've noticed that, from taking the break with doing the live streams and then coming back and posting about it, I'm getting like zero traction. And I don't think it's because people have lost interest. For most cases, I just think for some reason, both Facebook and Instagram are not really pushing my posts to people. I'm not sure why. I have no idea. But I don't know. Trying to keep up with this every single week. If everybody could do me a favor, please, when they see stuff, please share it. I would really, really appreciate it. No real pressure from me, though. If it's something you're willing to do to help me out, I appreciate it. But if you're not willing to, it's whatever. Not going to lose any sleep over it. All my homies hate the algorithm. And Jody, I think they mostly hate fishing for largemouth on it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. That Hinsdale section for largemouth is really good, but I do think I don't know. I've never been there late in the year down there for largemouth, but in the summer, it's really good. And on this topic tonight, when I did post it to my Instagram story, Jody replied, he was like, the best tip is to not fish for largemouth, go fish for smallmouth, which was really made me laugh. So thank you, Jody. Appreciate you, bud. Yeah, that's everything. So we had a good weekend this past weekend. We got out Sunday. I was trying to swing for Saturday, couldn't make it work. So as usual, I got my only Sunday. It was funny because I was checking the weather, and all this relates to why we're talking about this topic tonight as well. Me. From like Wednesday onward, I'm looking anywhere literally from Champlain to like Cobbassaconte in Maine down to Candlewood Lake in, the very southwestern corner of Connecticut. Like anything within 4-hour drive for me was fair game. And it just looked like it was gonna be crap no matter where I went, with the exception of down towards the Cape. It was supposed to be really nice down towards Cape Cod area, but I really don't like fishing down there this time of the year. I like to wait for like the dead of winter, because then that's my only option for like 3 months. So everything it said about Lakes region of New Hampshire was like 50% chance of light rain in the morning, and then there was going to be a good large clearing, and then it was going to dump like everywhere in the afternoon. So we're like, all right, we'll send it. And we got to like Laconia, and it was pouring. So check the weather, and there's just one giant like storm system moving through that covered just south of and all the way to just north of Winnipesaukee. We're up that way, and it made for a really cold, wet 2 hours. But the water temp was perfect. The fish were positioned exactly where I expected them to the point where we pulled up. Andrew had never been to this particular body of water. Is what are we doing? I was like, we're gonna go over here. There's a rock pile, and it's all really, really shallow with a bunch of like riprap rock and sparse vegetation on the shallow side of it. And then on the deep water side of it, like that's the main lake. So all these fish from this one rock pile, they go 100 feet, maybe 150 feet, they're on the bank. And if they go 50 feet the other way, they're over 30 feet of water. So for me, that's like absolutely clutch kind of stuff to look for at this time of the year, with the water temps being right about 50 degrees. We'll say really low 50s to really high 40s. And it was just like clockwork. We pulled right up to it, and we literally only fished that one rock pile. We did shoot over to a different point for like 5 minutes, and there was nothing home. So went back to the rock pile, caught a couple more, and then got out of there. But I mean, it was just like perfect. It just absolute consistency year in and year out, targeting that kind of thing. And when I was trying to think about what to talk about for this week, I went back and looked, and we've talked about cold water tactics, specifically in the spring. We talked a lot about like fall tactics and like dead of winter tactics, but like this kind of transition specifically for largemouth, I have not really specifically tackled. So that's why I decided, I was like, you know what, this is a good time, because everything's setting up right now, depending upon where you are in greater New England, Northeast, there's going to be a pretty good window here where it should be lights out, as long as you know where to look. So hopefully I can share as much as I can about what I've learned and make it better for everybody else. Let's see. Nate, Candlewood was incredible last Sunday. Rain held off till 4, and that's when the bite got crazy. Eric and jerkbaits, lots of deep divers. So that is awesome, and also makes me sad because Candlewood is where I wanted to go, but with how crappy the weather was supposed to be even down there, I didn't want to do quite that far of a drive to be soaked the whole ride home. So I was like, let's just try and stick local. And that way, if it's like awful, at least we're not too far from home. I'm going to try and get down to Candlewood this weekend. Not because of that. That was already my plan. Thankfully, I had a buddy reach out and give me some intel about what he was doing down there recently too, which certainly helps with the curve of trying to figure out what it is I think they're going to be doing. But what he told me, I'm extremely encouraged. So I'd like to get down there. It's been a couple of years since I was down there. That's the plan. We'll see how it goes. Dave, Saturday, 6-pound, 3-ounce largemouth bass, ripping a chatter and deep cabbage. Hell yeah, man. Congrats. That's a hell of a fish. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. So without further ado, let's do a little bit of map study to start. Let me get this open, because I'm going to tackle this kind of in this order. I made sure to take notes so I can keep myself on track and make sure I hit everything. So areas to key in on and why it is I'm looking that way. Then we're going to go about how we're targeting them, or how I target them. Both, it's kind of like a looking up or looking down approach. We'll see. And then obviously baits, and then cadence too, because that's kind of important as well. There's a lot of things. Like 6.75 inch seduce, Derek, probably. Yeah, you're not wrong. He's been hammering them out there on that. So let me pull that up and share that one. Let me make sure I get this done right. That one. share. Haha. All right. Can I do this so it is that better? Yeah, I'm kind of hidden by the banner, but that's okay. I can fix that. We'll just temporarily take that away. You don't need to see me. We're looking at the map. We're gonna do a little bit of map study to start. Chris, last question, then I'll get into it. How did he get sick? I thought he would have been on your live stream today, but tell him I said get better. I don't know. It's like clockwork this time of the year. Unfortunately, he just always seems to get sick right around now with some sort of cold. Almost every single, actually, I'm pretty sure every single year he's had something. But the plus side is the first year where he wasn't sick when we did the Berkshire Fall Classic. Go figure. We both had the worst tournament of our lives, but hey, you know what? It is what it is. So, but thank you, Chris. I'll let him know. Okay, map study. So again, we're covering the areas that I like to key on for this time of the year for those cold water largemouth and why it is I'm looking in these areas. The short and skinny of it for the why is I'm trying to find quick transition points that serve both the bait fish and the bass. The bait fish want a spot. I mean, at this time of the year, their options for structure to hide in starts to become more and more limited. A lot of the vegetation is starting to die off and or retreat. And I mean, at that point, all that's left is whatever hard structure there is out there in the form of rocks or timber. So their options start to become a little bit more limited. And their activity kind of becomes a little bit more predictable, where I tend to see my bite become a lot more consistently successful really early in the morning and then later in the day. Sometimes right in the middle of the day, that bite can be really good, but like my morning and afternoon nights tend to be really good. And without fail, as long as I find those transition areas, that has been very successful for me. And it's everything we've talked about so many times. We're doing the same thing in the spring, and we went all the way to deep water in the summer. Now we're coming back up into the fall into that winter transition. It's the same thing. We're just going in reverse. And we're following these fish from, a lot of these deep water haunts, or in the case of largemouth, deep water and really, really shallow vegetation. And everybody's kind of coming back and converging on these transition areas where they can get from whatever vegetation and hard structure they can find in those shallow to mid water depth kind of structure points. And they want to be able to make quick transitions with the ebbs and flows of the water temp. UV right now with the sun, when it does come out, is still fairly strong. So those shallows will still warm up pretty well during the day. And they still want to be able to be close to that. But then as the temperatures plummet overnight, they can make a quick transition to deep water, which is why I brought up this place. Sand Pond. It's a place in New Hampshire. I don't even think there's largemouth here, but this is a really good example of a pond that honestly sucks. I've been once and I was not impressed. I don't plan on going back. But the contours here are a really, really good exaggerated idea for what it is I'm going to be looking for. What I want to try and find is any structure that I can find that is, again, close to those quick transitions, but I want those quick transitions to be adjacent to some relatively large flats as well. I want to have those dwell areas. That's the same, again, in the spring as it is at this time of the year. Having quick transition points and then large flats or dwell areas where the fish can stay consistent, both bait fish and bass, they can attack through that, but then quickly make jumps back up the shallows or back down deep. Like, these have been insanely consistent for me year after year after year. So if I were looking at a place like this, again, Sand Pond, it's definitely a different kind of body of water, but again, very exaggerated for what it is that I would be looking for. So it's a very easy example to show you. This point, I don't know if you can, you can kind of see my cursor. Okay. This whole area where we're coming in from this point, you kind of have a little choke point through here before you come onto this. It's kind of a flat. I mean, really, it's got a little bit of elevation change, but for the most part, this whole hump is very consistent. And on either side, it drops off onto really, really deep water. This is as textbook gets on a slightly deeper body of water. You can find them usually without fail anywhere along the steep sides. They'll be up on top. They might, depending upon the water temp, if you're still talking like right around 50, low 50s, I would find them probably up higher on here on the shallower end of this point, even all the way up here on this area where it's 4 and 5 feet across. It can vary wildly from body of water to body of water, and then especially with the forage type that they have. if this was a pond that has a lot of yellow perch and a lot of bluegill and a lot of crappie, any one of those three or more are likely to be up here on this flat at some point early in the day and then late in the day, maybe even middle of the day, but definitely early morning and late in the evening. They're going to move up all around this. As the water temperature gets cold, they're not going to move up as much. They're going to stay further and further out on the end of this point. But again, they can easily jump off to either side into this deep water in a very, very short swim. And for us, for everything, it's always been about finding bass around the bait fish. Finding the bait fish, you find the bass. So that's what I like about this spot. It's got a little bit of everything that kind of covers everything you would want to be looking for at this time of the year around a wide range of water temperatures. Right now, if we were to go out there, let's say this is 50 degrees. If I got out there in the morning, I would start right here, right off the tip of this submerged point on the shallow end, because this is the highest probability of success is how I would define a spot like this. If they're shallow, I would think that they're going to be in that 5 to 10 foot range somewhere on here. If it's actually not quite as ideal conditions for, because weather dictated or wind or whatever the case, then I might find them down here off this a little bit. But 50 really isn't that cold. So I'm not going to automatically start out here. Now, if I got out here and the water was in the low 40s, like say 40 to 45, then this would be my starting point. I'd come down here off of this deeper flat where the sustained depth is, and I'd start poking around there. But as we're in that kind of low 50s, high 40s right now, this is my starting point. If you get further south, let's say, Connecticut, Rhode Island, down in Mass near the Cape, like where things are still a little bit warmer. I was here in like low mid 50s as of this past Sunday. 100%, I'm starting up here on the shallower spot. And that's where I'm going to start poking around. And there's a number of different ways I'm going to tackle that with different approaches for what lures I'm throwing. But I'll get into that later. So this is by far and large the most obvious spot that I would start looking. If they weren't there, because one of the things that I have found is this big flat is kind of in the middle, relatively speaking, to this small body of water. And despite the fact it's not too far off of this mainland hump, this is still kind of in the middle of the lake. And while it would seem like they should be there, if you've got water that's, I don't know how to explain this. I do a lot better. I have much more consistency in that colder water fishing the deeper spots here close to the mainland than I do out towards the middle. This might still be good if your water was closer to like the mid to upper 50s. That's where I would start, is out here, because that's still pretty warm. I feel like they're not quite in that transition, but they're starting to kind of move in that direction. So that's where I'd start looking. But as it gets really cold, I like the really, really steep drop-offs up to really shallow water as the water gets much colder, just because consistency-wise, that has been my safest and most reliable bet to be able to lean on. So if neither one of those spots panned out, what else could be good in this body of water? This is another area where I'm going to look at off the point here on this island. You have a nice deep hole right here, which offers yet another ambush point for the bass to hide in and come in and out of. You got a quick transition here up to this larger flat, which is fairly sustained, but not crazy. I mean, it's definitely got some elevation change. And yet there's another kind of deep hole back here off the backside of this island. But you get a sustained flat right here next to this deeper pocket. You get a really big sustained flat here. And this, while still offshore, relative distance to the mainland is not that far. So this is another area that I would look at for a potential dwell, because it is adjacent to one of the deepest points of the lake. And not only that, but it's a large area of this deep water. Up here off of this point, maybe I would look over here anyway instead, because at least this flat offers at least some consistency in its dwell. It's relatively consistent in the overall depth that you're finding across this. 19 to 24 feet. It's not that big of a change from end to end. And that's over a pretty big area. And you got deep water on either side. So they have even more options around this to be able to jump from deep to shallow, with also another really, really shallow point up here in this 10-foot range. Like this dwell area in here is also really good too. And that 10 to 11 feet, like that's a really good depth that I would love to target as well. So food for thought on that. So that's one example. Let's see if I can't find something that is not quite as obvious as that. Where am I? Oh, okay. We can take a look at this. Yeah, see? So, oh, you know what? Let me think about this. I want to try and find something that it doesn't offer as much, deep water as sand does, which I've already lost myself. I forget where it is. Right here. What if we look at Long Pond? No, because even that's got some deep water. What's this one? Oh, okay. This could be good. I will tell you that if this is your only option, this is what you got, right? So you got to do what you can to work with what is available to you. I do not like fishing bodies of water like this when it starts to get really, really cold. Like once the water gets down in the low 40s, I will not fish a body of water like this where the vast majority of it is so shallow, because if you could fish several days a week, like this could be really good. But for me, only being able to fish it one time a week, the water temperatures here can be so volatile with just a couple of really, really cold nights. But then you get one really warm day and everything can come back up like really fast as well. So it can kind of be all over the place and really quickly. And unless you're there to be able to fish it relatively often, I would say at least twice a week, trying to nail down what could be good in this can be really, really challenging. That's why I typically try and find places that have deeper water, because it tends to be a little bit more consistent in that. Dog bone, that's a good one. I could go down and look at that. I've never been there, but I've looked at it, so that's another really good example. But if this is your only option, you got a shallower body of water and you're trying to figure out like, okay, well, I don't really have that much excessive deep water by comparison to the rest of the lake. Like, where do you look? Places like this, structure becomes all the more important, in my opinion. And in a lot of cases for these ponds, milfoil can be found pretty readily. And then same with lily pad patches. And for what I found, the bait fish, regardless of water temp, will push into whatever structure that they can find to hide when and where that they can. And I fished a lot of little ponds. You know what? I'm just going to show it. Where are we? I will give the best example that I can give for a small body of water. Where the hell am I? Oh wow, I'm way over there. It'd be nice if I could see. Okay, so this is right there. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this proper. Half Moon Pond in Hancock. I grew up fishing here. I've been fishing here. I'm 40 years old now. I've been fishing here since I was 9 or 10 years old. And there's nothing special about it, which is why I'm happy to share it. I have no problem with this. Definitely a cool little spot. There's next to nothing here. It is nothing but vegetation, with the exception of 2 logs that are, I'm not going to tell you where. If you go there, you can't miss them. But and then there's some shoreline timber. And other than that, the only thing you have in here is pond cabbage, lily pads, and a little bit of milfoil. But even that, the milfoil is like really sparse. It has not really bloomed outside of the couple of spots that it's in here yet. That will eventually spread throughout the lake pond. So what do you even fish for the cold water stuff at this time of the year, where you've got, say, water's at 50 degrees and it's getting colder faster? Where would you even look in this? Because it's relatively featureless, right? Like there is kind of deeper water, but I can tell you right now, there is nothing out here in the middle. There may be a stray patch of pond cabbage out here. I actually haven't fished here in 3 years now that I think about it. I can tell you that I've never seen anything out there. It could be different. What this place does have is the entire bottom of this pond is covered in, muck, like mush that's about a foot high. I'm trying to visualize this, and I realize I'm this little teeny tiny picture down the corner. So it's about a foot high, 6 inches to a foot high, covering the entire bottom of this place. It's effectively a kettle pond. Like it's the same as a kettle pond. It is kind of a reservoir, and there's a spillway off the northern end. Cool spot, but it's all kind of the same stuff once you get off the bank. There's some down timber, but in the middle, there's a whole lot of nothing. What there is, though, is also a ton of lily pads. And in this particular place, the lily pads seem to be a little bit more stout than other places that I have fished. And a lot of those lily pads hang out, they kind of hang on a little bit longer than most other places I've been to. But even when they do not die, but wilt and everything kind of falls down on itself, you still have 3-ish feet of water all around that. I've been out here when the water's been 41 to 42 degrees, and I've caught all my fish in 2 feet of water, because At that point, any and all the pond cabbage and all that other crap is gone. So the only thing left there is there's 2 logs that's in like 7 feet of water, and then just this consistent sea of vegetation like this throughout the rest of the pond. The only thing that really offers substantial cover is the metric ton of lily pads that have all just kind of fallen over themselves. And I will get fish way up shallow in that in times where normally I probably wouldn't anywhere else that offers some other form of structure offshore, be it rock piles or submerged timber, whatever the case. That's where I'm looking at when I'm dealing with a smaller, shallower body of water. If I can still find some milfoil, because that stuff is like really sturdy, that it's hardy. It holds on really, really well late into the year. Not crazy, but good enough that it's still very consistent for me to go and target that in a kettle pond that is absent of structure anywhere else. But lily pad patches, especially in the spring, but really even so, this time of the year in that colder water. So you're dealing with smaller bodies of water that's relatively shallow, comparatively speaking. This is also really consistent. And then I'll throw one more because Dogbone there said it. I don't even know how to pronounce this place. Waquaket? I don't know. This is down in Cape Cod. It's cool. I've never been here, but I've looked at this for the last 5 or 6 years since the first time I went down to the Cape. And I've been thinking about coming down here forever, and I haven't made it there. Place looks cool. There is so much friggin' just depth change everywhere. And it's not crazy as far as the varying depths. The total difference from, shallowest to deepest. Like, it's not a very deep lake. Deepest here is 29.5 feet right here in this little pocket. 30 feet right in the middle. But other than that, you have a lot of varying humps throughout this whole thing. I really feel like if you can get out here and not deal with the boat traffic, which I'm assuming is just a nightmare, like it is everywhere in the middle of summer, but especially down the Cape, I feel like offshore out here could be really fun, but I don't know, because I know a lot of places in the Cape don't have much vegetation because they just nuke everything down there, which is sad. But this, man, if I was out here at this time of the year, I would still be looking at choke points and mainland points. So I'd start here at Stony Point. Excuse me. I would be looking around this. Doesn't offer much of a dwell on the shallower spots. We got 9.5, 10 feet right at the edge of this darker shade of blue, up to 8 feet through here. So only a 2-foot swing over this large area. I would still kind of consider that a dwell area. It's not much, but it's something. Then you also have this flat over here, which is, again, adjacent to some of this deeper water, in this case, even the deepest water. And actually, you got the secondary point off of this coming out. So as they kind of move around, as they get into really, really cold water, you have a lot of opportunity here between different dwell areas up to the shallows, up to the bank, and quickly back out to this deeper water. So that's one spot I would look at. Oh, yeah, especially down here. This isn't much of a dwell on this hump, but it's something. And it's, again, adjacent to the mainland, which is something I always like. You got deeper water here, which, relatively speaking, is not super deep, but relative to this body of water, yes. Waquaket. Got it. Thank you. So those are a couple of areas I would look at. I would be more prone to look in this area with the deepest water possible. Stop that. But, anywhere in here has potential. There's not a lot of dwell that I see. And that may or may not matter. This could be good. You kind of got a good little dwell here, and it's not super deep. You got these shallower backwater pockets where if you get a nice warm day, everything can kind of want to push up and pull towards that, and they can swing back out pretty quickly. Yeah, I would even say same deal in here in these choke points where you got some deeper water out here around this, but you got this shallow area, deeper water, and that's plenty deep, relatively speaking, for what bass would be happy in the winter. 16 feet doesn't seem that deep, but for what they need to survive under the ice, if and whenever this place gets ice, like this could all be good in here. I would hesitate to come this far back in here, because while it's relatively deep, there's not a lot for them to go through, and they got to go over some really shallow water to get back out of the main lake. So I would still look in here if I was striking out everywhere else, but this is probably the last spot that I would look at if I was up in this area. I'd stay more out over here. Yeah, round long point. I like this. This all looks good. So there you go. That's what I'm talking about when I say, let's remove that. when different areas I'm trying to look at specifically for largemouth, where it is I'm trying to find them. And, in the absence of real structure, again, as far as it goes, vegetation or rocks, I try to find one or the other. And if not, then just transition points and dwell areas. And if you can get around the bait fish, then you're going to be far more successful than you would be trying to find them and pick them apart on any other isolated structure. Not to say you can't be. Specifically, I said you'd be far less successful. For me, bait fish is like absolutely key. It may not always get me some really big fish, but it consistently gets me fish. And that's what I'm more concerned with when I'm out there fishing this time of year. If it was tournament fishing, it might be a little bit different. But for the sake of just trying to put fish in the boat and trying to figure out where the bulk of them are going to be, where you're most likely to be successful, that's how I'm going to go about trying to tackle that. So, locations covered. What did I miss for comments? Going back. Oh, Dan, thanks for joining, man. Appreciate you. I did go there. Oh, it's about the only lake on the Cape that I do well at, is what Dogbone said. All right. That is, I've heard there's big pike in there too. And I wouldn't mind messing around with some big pike. As long as they're over 36 inches, I don't mind catching them at all. Alex, spent a lot of time in Hancock as a kid. Cousins lives there. Cousins live there. Can't remember if I've ever been to that pond though. It's a cool spot. Like that whole area of the state, like from Milford all the way to the Vermont border and from the Mass border up to about Lebanon, like that's where I grew up. That whole area, everything out there, that's so I learned how to cut my teeth for just fishing in general. There's a lot of cool places out there, and it's nice. It's quiet. It's really, really quiet out there. With a few exceptions, it's rare you get on a pond out there and you've got more than 2 other boats with you. Usually it's you alone or one other boat, like the vast majority of the time, which is just awesome. Oh, Panda, thanks for joining, man. Jody, 35-inch pike is trash though. And I agree with this. Ice is the worst. I'm not, I never want to actually target pike, but if I get one that's at least 36 or if I got one that's bumping 40 inches, I don't mind it. They put up a good fight and like a prolonged fight too. I'm okay with that. So we covered the where and it really covered the why. So now we're going to talk about how do I go about targeting them? That's a 1-2 punch. I like fishing structure more than anything. I am definitely a structure fisherman. That's how I grew up, and I've been very successful doing that. So I will always opt to fish something on the bottom. That's going to be my first choice every single time, and I will try and force it as long as I can before I change my approach from that. Don't get me wrong. I really like fishing moving baits. I really like throwing a suspending jerk bait for a moving bait, but obviously slowing down, spinner baits, bladed jigs, swim baits. Like I like doing all of those things, but I really like to physically feel the structure that I'm fishing around, whether it be rock or timber or grass, and pick it apart and fish really slow because I've just done really well with that for bigger fish. But when you're at this time of the year, like something I've always said for years about fishing for smallmouth, like the first thing I always want to do when I'm going for smallmouth is figure out, they look it out, are they feeding up or are they feeding down? And then kind of figure out what the rest of my game plan is going to be there from that point. For largemouth, same deal. At this time of the year, I feel like you can kind of catch them any which way, but as the water gets a little bit colder, I really feel like I have to narrow down, are they feeding up, or are they feeding down? Because there'll be plenty of days where we will catch them on nothing but dragging a bait on the bottom, and you can't take it up off the bottom or you won't get bit. And then there's other days where literally the only thing that will hit is slow rolling a swim bait or fishing a jerk bait. That's the approach. When I go out there, obviously I get 1 day a week, so I have to put together the pattern every single friggin' time that we go out. So I have to come prepared. I know what I want to catch them on, so I tend to go a little bit heavy on the jig side, but I will always have a jerk bait, usually 2 jerk baits, kind of right now, regular Vision 110 and a 110 plus 1. And I'll have a spinner bait, a jackhammer, and a soft body swim bait. And I like throwing all those things too. And I'm never really sure which one of those they're going to want to hit. As much as I like a jerk bait, I'd rather catch fish with something that I'm just constantly moving. So if there's wind, first thing I'm picking up is that spinner bait and jackhammer. I'm going to alternate between those, going across anything and everything I can find with those 2 things. If there's not as much wind, then I will usually stick with just a jackhammer or the jerk bait. And sometimes that's soft body swim bait. And I mean, honestly, that can be anything from just swimming like a 3.3 inch kayak up to like a 4.3 inch. I usually don't go much bigger than that. I know guys do really well with some other bigger soft body swim baits, like the working class working class zero, citizen 6 inch and 7 inch for some of these bigger soft body swim baits. Like those can be really, really effective. I have done exceptionally well right now when the water temp is right about 50 degrees, throwing some of my bigger crankdown swim baits, like my 5 and 6 inch crankdowns. I've done really well with those this time of the year as well. And like if they're kind of feeding the middle of the water column, like that, those are all my go-tos. But I always have that follow-up where I'm trying to pick them up off the bottom in case they're tucked down. That's what we found this past weekend, where almost all the fish that we caught were off of the bottom. I was catching them, almost all of them, on a Ned rig in my case, and then open water sniper with a little general on the back. But usually I'll throw something like a spider jig, or I mean, really any kind of jig at this time of the year to pick apart at the bottom. Sometimes I'll just drag a naked Kitech as well and try to simplify things. Really kind of hard to beat, any sort of jig that you're really comfortable with. Ned rig at this time of the year is always really, really consistent and just deadly. Man, I don't even know. We're getting close to blade bait season. If you want to throw something a little bit different off the bottom, get a little more pizzazz. And then you can throw things like a lipless crankbait if you want something that's kind of a hybrid between the two. And you can do the same thing with a jackhammer or bladed jig, where you're just kind of working it like a blade bait, where you're getting on the bottom and you're just kind of hopping it along. So you get a little bit of that movement, but you're trying to get them to eat it off the bottom. That's how I'm going about it. I need to be able to cover the water column specifically for largemouth from top to bottom, because they're kind of all over the place this time of the year for what their preference is for how they want to eat. What we saw this past Sunday with that front coming through, even though they were feeding really aggressively, everything that we saw, with the exception of that 6-pound, 1 ounce largemouth that Andrew caught, was feeding down, and they were tucked down tight to all the structure. Anything that we saw, even the bait fish, was barely off of the bottom. Again, the exception being that one giant largemouth that was sitting, where were we? We were at about 12 feet of water, one individual boulder kind of set aside from the bulk of the boulder pile that we were fishing. And that one boulder was about 4 feet below the surface, and the largemouth, so top of the rock, 4 feet below, bottom of the rock was about 10 feet deep. And I think that big largemouth was sitting like 6-ish feet deep. And he was panning around. All of a sudden we saw it, but it was such a strong return. It kind of looked like when you get one rock and then you're kind of seeing like just the very back edge of the rock behind the rock that's in front of you. And we're like, I think that's a fish. And he's like, no, that's a rock. And I'm like, no, go back and pan back. And I'm pretty sure it's a fish. And he swam it over, and the thing came up. Sure enough, big largemouth. He got it on the first cast. But that was the only one that came up to eat. Everybody else was eating down. So, you got to have that. You got to be comfortable with that 1-2 approach and to be able to go after everything. I didn't say tube. Tube is really good. There you go. Dog bone. Tube or hula grub for smallmouth. I will go at this time of the year. Hula grub is what I'm going to throw 99% of the time. A tube can be exceptionally good as well, though. Moderate, I would say pretty inconsistent success, but still moderately successful with the tube the last couple of years. I don't know why. I think it's just cyclical with that bait in particular right now, because so many people threw it for so long that I do think the fish are just conditioned to it in too many places. But I am starting to see a resurgence in the consistency of that bite. So, I mean, throw both, but for my money, hula grub still outperforms with more consistency, so I'm going to throw that. Mark, spinnerbait was number one producer for me last week. There you go. That's what I like to see. Then Dogbone again. Do you fish spinnerbait deep? So Mark said he was targeting shoreline rock. So that's good. I typically don't fish a spinnerbait deep. I have in the past, but not recently. So I can't really say yes or no on that. Kind of, but not really. Ooh, Mark, try a small tube and a Ned head. I like the idea of that. You know what? I'll tell you what. Crazy Hick Bait Company, New Hampshire-based company, they have Helgramites for their soft plastics. And there's something about that bite this time of the year that is really, 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 really good. So food for thought. There's a couple different ways you could throw it. Drop shot, probably an eco rig, shaky head, Ned rig, bunch of different ways you can throw it. Highly recommend. It is good. Okay, so we got areas we keyed in on and why. We got how to target them, so that looking kind of up and down approach and the different things I'm going to throw to cover both all the bottom contact and then middle of the water column. So let's talk about specific baits. Let's start with bottom stuff first. I mean, I kind of already covered this, but I'll give some more specific examples. If I'm fishing bottom, the first thing I'm going to be picking up and throwing, as long as there's not a ton of vegetation, is the Beast Coast OW Sniper. There's a reason why we talk about this jig so much since it came out, is because it's by far and large the most consistent producing jig that I have thrown. And I will throw all of it. Like everything that he's ever made for these, I own them in 1/2 ounce and 3/8 ounce for almost all of them. And then quite a few I have in a lot of 1/4 ounce as well. My preference, though, is the MB versions. Give me MB Pro Pumpkin, which is just the 22 strand green pumpkin color, and then MB Mothman, which same deal, 22 strand all black. And I will throw a variety of trailers on the back of that. I will always, without fail, have 2 of those tied on. One's gonna have a crawl profile, and the other one's gonna have a swim bait on the back. And as far as what the size goes, I try to keep it relatively similar in overall size and shape, right? The OW Sniper is a much more finesse cut on that skirt. Again, it's only 22 strands and it's relatively short. I like to keep my trailers so that whatever it is only sticks out just a little bit past the skirt. So for a Kitech, if I'm throwing a swim bait or the slow flow from Beast Coast Fishing, I like the 2.8 for the Kitech, 2.85 inch for slow flow. There's some days where they really want a meal, and you can bump that up to like a 3.5 to 3 3/4 inch swim bait on the back. And all that skirt is doing is just giving it a little bit more volume on the fall and on the bottom as you're moving it. But really, it's the trailer that is kind of the main course for what I feel is really getting it done. And then how you dress that up matters greatly. And that's where I really like that 22 strand skirt. It's just a little something without being overly bulky in its presentation. I want them to see primarily the overall profile of the bait on the trailer on the back more than I do the bulk of the skirt that it's providing, if that makes sense. So if I had to pick a go-to for both, I would say it's like scary good. Either the Berkeley Chigger Craw and Max Scent is really, really good. And it doesn't have to be Max Scent, even just the regular one. The Flip and Delight from Beast Coast, I will trim that down. I'll leave like obviously the 2 main legs, but I'll take out the little 2 appendages in between the 2 main legs, and I'll trim down the sides a little bit just to make it a little bit more slim. And the benefit to the Flip and Delight when you do that, especially an open water sniper, is you get a lot of action out of the legs in the fall, but then they stand up straight a lot better than say something like a Rage Craw, where those legs are a lot more curved. So yes, they stand up, but really the biggest benefit to like a Rage Craw is the reaction you get from those legs in the fall. But if I'm more concerned with both, not so much the reaction and the action in it on the fall, but the presentation that it provides when it's on the bottom, then that's where I really like something like the Chigger Craw or the Flip and Delight and anything kind of along those lines. Really, really like that. And then that's one. On the other one, I'm going to have some sort of swim bait profile. Again, Beast Coast Slow Flow, it really is my go-to at this time of the year in the colder water. Derek absolutely knocked it out of the park with that design because that bait really does excel in that cold water. So whether you're getting them when you're just dead sticking this thing on the bottom or you're doing really, really slow dragging across the bottom, you still get a lot of kick out of tail even under extremely slow movements. So that's really my go-to. And I keep it stupid simple. Green pumpkin and black. Those are my only options. If I'm really, really confident that I'm going to get them on a jig and I'm going to get them on the bottom of that jig, I will tie on 4 of those snipers. I will tie on I usually tie on like an all green pumpkin craw, and then I'll do like a really dark kind of craw setup, whether, and that's kind of the only time that I'll get away from the MB colors and I'll go towards like the dirt bag is really, really hard to beat at this time of the year because of that color combination. And it's a higher strand count, but it still works really, really well. And I'll throw that with like a really dark green pumpkin, or just like a really, Kitech has a Gobi color where it's a laminate of like a really dark brown and like almost a black. It's like a purplish black. If I can find something in anywhere in that range of that really dark brown to almost like a purplish black for a craw color, I really like throwing that. with those, you can throw just a straight up black or black with blue flake trailer. So that's kind of all my dark green pumpkins and stuff. And then I will throw just 100% black across the board. And that'll be both the jig and the craw trailer, and then swim bait 100%. Definitely throwing an all black setup, and then I'll throw an all green pumpkin. I want something that's extremely contrasting in color, which is what that black does when it's down there. And then you got your green pumpkin, which tends to blend in a little bit more. This time of year, it's kind of hard to really tell what you've got for light penetration and overall water clarity down at the bottom. And for some reason, just all black, regardless of what you're throwing, does really, really well at this time of the year. Blue flake tends to help a little bit too. So it's, you know what? You can't go wrong with those two colors. Don't get me wrong. We utilize a ton of different colors, but to simplify this approach, if you had to pick two, all green pumpkin, all black, you'll be good. You will catch fish more often than not. So as far as bottom contact baits, like that's what I'm going with. For jigs, before I go on, Alec had a good question. Do you find yourself leaning more towards swim bait for a trailer in winter fishing because craws are technically dormant? That is a phenomenal question. And yes and no. And that's why I always have both tied on, because there are some days where they will literally only touch a swim bait profile because they are primarily feeding on bait fish, because you are correct. Craws are really kind of technically dormant. And there's just there are more days where that swim bait or a bait fish profile will be the only thing that produces, and a crawfish profile just will not. But then there's other days where the only thing they're going to bite is a crawfish profile. And I'm talking like in the middle of January and February, where really technically there should not be any crawfish available. But I don't necessarily think the bass know that. I think that's kind of where we draw a line of how smart they can be. They know the profile of it. They know that's something that they will always eat. And regardless of if that's the only damn thing they've seen in a month, that is a crawfish, they're still going to eat it pretty often. So that's why I always have both tied on. But baitfish profile, much more consistent in this really, really cold weather. So as far as jig goes, that's how I'm going to tackle all that. You know, if I'm fishing a place that's primarily just all really vegetation, I'm still going to throw the little Magnum from Beast Coast Fishing, because it's the only really effective way to be able to pick apart, with a jig at least, all that vegetation. Overall, Texas rig can still work really well this time of the year. Shaky head as well. Ned rig, 100%. I will always have a Ned rig tied on this time of the year. And I mean, I usually just throw either the Little General or the Z-Man TRD, but the big TRD can also be really good in this colder weather. And then, technically a blade bait is I only fish it on the bottom, so that covers all of my bottom contact stuff. We're getting pretty close to that blade bait bite being really good. Now, that's everything on the bottom. Now we're talking middle of the water column. Megabass Vision 110. I refuse to go out fishing this time of the year without having one tied on, because I would say if I had to break down, 51% of my fish are on a suspending jerkbait, the other 49% are a jig. And that's one weekend. The next weekend, it's reversed. In the sense of like the whole winter season, if I really had to pick two and give an edge to one, very, very slight edge to the jerkbait, with the jig immediately behind it. A suspending jerkbait is just so insanely good in this colder weather, because you get a little bit of reaction out of them, and it just sits there and hangs in front of their face. And how do they not eat this delicious looking little bait fish in the right size and the right profile and the right color scheme of all the stuff they're swimming around that looks like it's dead and just kind of chilling in the water column? It is so stupidly effective and deadly consistent. I will always have a jerkbait tied on. If you want something that's moving a little bit more, bladed jig. And I always will go to the jackhammer over anything else. Thunder Cricket from Strike King is also really, really good. But in that colder weather, I got to give the edge to the jackhammer, because I do feel it is second to none in its ability to start up and stay vibrating at a very, very low speed. That's something we've been talking about for the last 7, 8 years now. Shortly after it came out, we've been talking about this for a long time. We've done exceptionally well with that jackhammer, specifically in really cold weather. Beast Coast Blade Runner for a trailer, and a Miyagi from Beast Coast for the trailer. And you can go skirt or no skirt. I will say that Miyagi on like the OG bladed jig, or the OG chatterbait from Z-Man, that one, because it's so much cheaper, I can stomach just pulling the skirt off of it and just going naked bladed jig, or jackhammer, not jackhammer, naked chatterbait with that Beast Coast Miyagi on the back. It is a big profile, but oh boy, it's good. It's really, 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 really good. I gotta back up a second. From Mark at Northeast Bass Fishing. Sean, when do you find the baby dozer or Max feels a better option than the sniper? Areas that are real rocky? Thanks. Yes. I don't talk about both those jigs nearly as much as I should. And for me, they're all interchangeable. Like, I will throw the baby dozer a lot, and it's not fair that I didn't give it the time that it deserves, because I say that I have 4 snipers tied on. That's still true, but I will also have a baby dozer tied on as well. I don't throw the max feel as much as I used to. And I just don't. That smaller cut on the skirt for both the sniper and the baby dozer has just by far and large outproduced over the max feel. Another one with max feel. I've killed it on that jig for a long time prior to baby dozer and open water sniper introduction. And I think it's just a lot of the areas I've been fishing the bulk of the season, last few years, I still kind of attack it the same way I did 7-8 years ago when I started fishing the max fields. Still throwing almost the same colors, so I almost feel like I maybe kind of conditioned them to that bigger profile and longer skirt on the max field, and that's why the baby dozer and the open water sniper have been doing better. But you really can't go wrong with all those. If I'm in some really heavy rock, I really like the baby dozer a little bit better, especially if there's a little bit of vegetation present. Then having that brush guard is hugely helpful. Same deal with the max field. If I'm fishing really deep, I do like throwing that 3/4 ounce max field, but then again, I get the 5/8 ounce baby dozer, which I like a little bit better. Especially again, I like fishing structure. I do feel the baby dozer does a better job climbing up and over a lot of those rocks compared to the max field. So that's where I'm at. I covered jerkbait, covered the jackhammer, obviously spinnerbait. I almost never throw a trailer on the back. If I do at this time of year, I throw a stinger hook or a trailer hook more than I would any sort of a soft body, trailer on the back. And what else have I missed? I covered all those. Oh, I mean, obviously big swim bait. I mean, I've caught some of my biggest fish on big swim baits have come from like right now when that water temp is about 50-ish and even down to the mid 40s, and especially on crankdowns. I mean, literally fishing like a giant square bill and working those transition areas from the really shallow down the transition to slightly deeper water, anywhere from like that 2 to 8 foot range. I've caught some tanks on my bigger swim bait, my crankdown swim baits. I love throwing those this time of the year. I think that kind of covers everything for all these things. Oh yeah, traps. Honorable mention to them. I will say for me personally, because the last 4 years, I have done next to nothing on rattle traps or lipless crankbaits. They're really, really good. I know a lot of guys that do exceptionally well with them. So if you have even a slight amount of confidence in it or a moderate amount of confidence in throwing it, you should have one tied on every time because it does produce. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I know that one big part of my problem is I'm not giving it enough time like I should because I just have lost all confidence in it whatsoever. I don't know. For years, I used to do so well on a lipless crankbait and just never panned out for me. But I know a lot of other guys that absolutely kill it on it. And I will say the thing that I know that works really well for that, from previous success on my part, and then what I know guys are still doing now, is slow rolling it over the top of any vegetation that is still present. And you want to it's just like in the spring or in the summer, at any point you can find vegetation, get your bait close to it until it just kind of kisses it. And it's usually on that snap out that the fish will eat it. And the other thing you do is kind of yo-yo it on your retrieve where you cast it out, let it fall close to the bottom, and you reel it up. And like either you reel it up and kill it, and reel it up, kill it, or you just reel up the slack a little bit and pull the rod up, let it fall. Reel up the slack, pull it up, let it fall. And you're kind of yo-yoing it all the way back to the boat. That's especially deadly if you could do that where you've got clean bottom. In the same areas that throw a blade bait. And Drew, yeah, I brought up blade bait a couple times already. So you can literally do the same thing. You can fish lipless crankbait the exact same way as a blade bait. It is in effect essentially the same damn thing, but a blade bait lipless crankbait actually has more profile and we'll say volume to it than a blade bait does, where blade bait is just profile and or / silhouette. Lipless crankbait is profile plus body. So to me, it actually kind of offers a little bit more of a tantalizing bite to it. But you have two very distinctly different sounds, right? With your blade bait, depending upon what you're working across, if you got some like hard packed bottom, especially some riprap rock, when that hits, it's more like a clang versus the rattle that you would get out of a lipless crankbait or rattle trap. Can't go wrong with any of those things though. So honorable mention for the lipless crank, only because me personally, last 4 or 5 years with it, next to nothing for positive results. But I know everybody else, not everybody else, a lot of other people have been very, very successful with it. That was a lot. I think I covered just about everything. I mean, everything relatively, that's important for targeting cold water largemouth at this time of the year. Again, it's specific to 50-ish degrees, like low 50s and colder, and largemouth only. There's a lot more nuances I get into if I was given much more specific examples for, well, if I was in these conditions, how do you approach that? I can go down that, but I need to be fed those examples for me to be able to elaborate on it. Alec, my confidence in the trap is about 2,000 to 2,000. What are you trying to tell me? Oh, yep. Here you go. Mark, I like them weedy lakes where there may still be some grass that hasn't totally died off. Yeah, 100%. A lipless crank, even a blade bait, and jackhammer or bladed jig of any kind, where you get situations like that, deadly, absolutely deadly. And for me, again, all of those, and even a spinnerbait too, soft body swim bait, anything like that, where you've still got a moderate amount of the vegetation left over that hasn't completely died off yet, and it's set up in the right depths, all the bait and the bass are going to move into that, and especially the bait, they're going to hide in that. So as you're coming through and you're just kind of ticking the top of stuff, especially if you get just ever so slightly hung up and you snap that out, regardless of what any of those baits are that you're throwing, that's usually when I get bit. Very, very good. I really like that a lot in those cases. Negative 2,000. There we go. Built to spill. Is that what I'm throwing? Throwing. Talking too much fishing. Foam Jackson Tupper. Ah, it's delicious. Oh yeah, built to spill. There it is. It is so good. So good. The Bass and Panda. Use forward-facing sonar to find a short yo-yo hop right above the grass line at Havasu to get some to bite. Hell yeah, man. That's what I like to hear. I would kill to get out to the West Coast someday. I would love to fish Havasu. I've wanted to fish that for so long, especially watching when the elites used to go there. Although that may have been even prior. I'm trying to think the last time they were there, were they had the elites? I think they were. I remember when Aaron Martins won there. I think that was the last time the elites were there. And he got on that all black jig bite because he caught a bass like way deep in the grass. They were eating on those baby blackbirds that were falling out of their nests that were built into the grass stalks. So I thought that was the coolest thing. I mean, at this point, the only thing I haven't really covered is gear, but a lot of that just comes down to preference, and I don't really think that there'd be anything overly beneficial to cover because there's so many different options for what you could throw for all these different baits. There really isn't, there's nothing specialized that I feel that you need right now. So there's that. I will say for clothing though, if any of you are in need of stuff to keep you warm, now you better get on it because it's getting cold out there in a hurry. And I would say clothing is by far one of the most important things to have when you're out there. And I'm not just saying this because I'm going to plug FXR. I can plug FXR while I'm doing this. No, it literally really is important. And we've done 2 different live streams now where we specifically only talked about like clothing gear that we use in rainy situations. And then obviously at this time of the year, trying to fish in your boat, open water through the winter, man, it sucks. There's no other way to put it. And, unless you're fortunate enough, you get to pick the days you go out, you can wait for like the really nice days, which you usually get one every 2 to 3 weeks at most through the winter. Some of us aren't as fortunate. And it seems like Sundays are always just abysmally cold for me throughout the entire winter. So clothing is extremely important. It's something that I struggled with for years before I came on with FXR. And I found, and not only an opportunity to get more options, but all of a sudden realizing what my options were made a huge difference. I will say hand and foot warmers, they go a long way to making your day a lot more enjoyable, especially if you're someone like me. I am perfectly fine being outside. Like, okay, maybe not perfectly fine. I could tolerate being outside right now when the weather was in the low 40s today in town, and it was kind of breezy, but the sun was dipping in and out. I wouldn't enjoy it, but I could survive out there in a t-shirt and shorts because my core body temperature, even when I was way skinnier than I am now, I've never had a problem keeping my core like warm. But my hands and feet have always been an issue my whole life. No matter what I do, my hands and feet get really, really cold and they're really hard to keep warm. So hand and foot warmers, especially like the mega sized hand warmers, are worth their weight in gold for me. When I'm out there this time of the year, I'm always wearing gloves. I usually get some of the FXR gloves. And what I do is I will cut the gloves at the first knuckle on my thumb, pointer, and middle finger so I can still tie things. But then my ring and my pinky finger, I leave the gloves intact. So those are completely, covered. And that helps so much with just keeping the wind and most of the water off of them. And that keeps them really warm. It keeps them warmer than usual. But then what I'll do is I'll get 2 mega sized hand warmers. I'll put one in each pocket so I can alternate going from, holding the rod with one hand to holding it with the other hand and just keep grabbing that hand warmer. Sometimes I'll put the hand warmer in my hand and hold the rod with it if I've got this hand warm, but I need to reel it in. Like, there's a bunch of different ways I've gone about doing that. And then I never go anywhere without foot warmers. As far as boots, you do want something waterproof, but I do feel that having something breathable is just as important. So as much as I love my FXR rain boots, the Vapor Pros, they're not breathable, but they're not supposed to be. Like, they're essentially a rubber boot, and that can be really good unless your feet sweat a lot, and that's when your feet get really, really cold. That's my problem. So having something that's also breathable is pretty important. So for there, I mean, I grew up in the skate park, so I've loved DC shoes forever. They have these insulated, like, winter kind of high tops that are phenomenal. They're essentially like wool lined, really, really warm, and just 2 small little foot warmers with those and a pair of wool socks. My feet are perfect. Like, I never have a problem with my feet throughout the whole winter ever since I went to that combo. Wool socks, like wool lined boots, and then foot warmer underneath, just like all my toes and the balls of my feet. Hugely, hugely helpful. And then for like the bulk of it, for jacket and pants, as long as you have something windproof on the very outer layer, and then on your base layer, you want something that's moisture wicking. That is at a bare minimum what I feel necessary to stay extremely warm out there. From there, you can get a lot more elaborate for what your choices are. I will say FXR Pro Fish has phenomenal ice fishing gear. The stuff I was wearing this past weekend, this will be my 6th season that I've been using this stuff. It is just now starting to lose its waterproofing ability, at least in the bibs. The jacket I did not wear this weekend. I wore just a rain jacket because it wasn't that cold. If I wear both my ice bibs and my ice jacket, they're wicked warm. Like, those are truly meant for like kneeling down on the ice in 10-degree weather with wind, and you will still be warm. So this time of year, wearing both is overkill. Just the bibs, great. Keeps me plenty warm. They come up really high, so they cover a lot of your core anyway. 5 years without treating them, and they're just starting to lose the waterproofing. Those are really overkill, though. Like, if you're just looking for a light amount of insulation, they also have their Vapor Pro insulated bibs. So the jacket and the bibs look just like the tri-laminate Vapor Pro rain jacket and bibs, but they have moderate insulation value. So like the rain bibs and jacket are a 0 for insulation. The ice fishing stuff is a 10. Maybe it's a 9, but it's on a 0 to 10 scale. Their Vapor Pro insulated stuff is halfway between all that. It's either a 4 or a 5 on the insulation rating. And it's just enough that it provides both wind breakage and some insulation. And it also has the fast float technology in both the bibs and the jacket with this light insulation stuff. So you have an added layer of safety / security if you are unfortunate to fall in. You have 2 hours of flotation built into the bibs and jacket as well. So there's a lot to be said for all of that. They have a bunch of other options for a variety of gloves. Obviously, they got really nice hats and beanies. They have a bunch of different boots, including ice fishing boots, obviously hoodies, like you name it. If you're interested, please reach out to me on any of my social media. I have a steep discount code for FXR that I can share with you. It only works on their FXR Pro Fish stuff, but I can promise you it is significant and it is awesome. I cannot publicly disclose it but I can tell it to anybody who reaches out to me privately. You in turn can then share with anybody else you want. By all means, have at it. There you go, Alec. I have the tri-laminate rain jacket and bibs, and it's phenomenal. That's what I like. I did, Jody, picking the day is my secret to success. Yep. There we go. Dogbone, you agree that smallmouth bass are more active than largemouth to the low 40s? 100%. That's why I almost always am chasing smallmouth. I just like smallmouth more anyway. I know I can catch bigger fish, so I go for largemouth, but I love chasing cold water smallmouth. I just like catching smallmouth in general anyway. And they are definitely a little bit more active. Still not easy, but give me smallmouth 10 times out of 10 this time of the year. As much as I love largemouth too, smallmouth is where my heart's at. There you go, Alec. Honestly, I've worn sweatshirt and sweatpants under the tri-laminate and have stayed warm. Yeah, there you go. And Mark can attest to it. He's used it. It's a sweet discount. Man, I do think I say I do. I know I do. I took notes. I made sure I wrote down notes to stay on topic tonight. I made it just under an hour of actually staying on topic, which has been the goal for the last several, I don't know, 20 episodes. I think I've been doing this where I've been like trying to keep it to an hour of actual on topic topping. Wow. On topic talking. This is the point where I start to fall apart. So I don't know. Any other last minute questions? I'll be happy to answer them. And I'm not sure what we're doing moving forward from here, but I'm just kind of taking this all week by week. We're seeing how it goes. And I think it's a good one. So it's good. Damn it. I even texted my wife, don't let me forget. And we both forgot. It's right out there. Text me. Which did you want this one? Is that the one I have? I forget. You told me which one you want. I think it's in a text. I'll go back and look. Do what I can. Alec, yeah. Also, can you confirm the discount code Sean has for FXR is absurd? You will save hundreds in some cases. Yeah, it's about as much as I can say without breaking my contract. That's true. Sean Miller, Graf makes a killer winter jacket and bib so hot you sweat in a t-shirt and shorts in freezing cold. I'm not familiar with that brand, but good to know. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Yeah, you know what? I think that's going to do it. So I appreciate everybody that came out to watch tonight. I do hope that this is beneficial for you. I'm happy I was able to stay on topic, keep myself sorted and focused, and I covered everything that I wanted to. Again, kind of high level, but like I've done a bunch of different videos, just like regular videos and a couple of live streams on this time of the year and this topic. And every time I come back and try and revisit it, I try and add in a few more nuggets of information that we learned over recent trips over the last year. And, and then even baits or colors or cadence, like things like that, like just anything else we can think of that's what we're trying to add to it. I don't want to just regurgitate the same thing year in and year out, because that's just not the case of what it is anyway while we're out there. Yes, the majority of it is overlap and is consistent year to year to year, which is what gives me confidence to share that with you and know that, when utilized, it will be beneficial for you. But there's always something new that I can add in, and I want to add in because I always want to learn something new, and I go out of my way to make sure I learn it because I want to become a better fisherman. Every single year, every single day, every trip that I go out, I'm trying to learn something new, and I'm trying to be better than I was the last time I went out. And from there, I take that, try and pay it forward. It's always the goal. Last but not least, as Alex said, if you have not done so yet, you're still here, please like the stream. Whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, doesn't matter. It all helps. I appreciate everybody that does even that very simple but very meaningful thing for me. So, other than that, thank you very much all for watching. Mike, thank you for the reminder text. I appreciate it. Get your hat packaged up shortly. I have to jump on another call with an old gaming buddy and help him out. But otherwise, I get to do the outro. Right, Andrew's not here. We'll be back next Wednesday night, as always, 8 p.m. Eastern, every single Wednesday night, here on the channel, youtube.com/@RealNorthernBass, or on Facebook, facebook.com/RealNorthernBass. Easy enough to find me. You can also follow me on Instagram, which is @RealNorthernBass. I always post when we're going live on there, whole 9 yards. Little Rich, last question before you go. Favorite jerkbait color? GP Pro Perch and GP Pro Blue, both from Megabass. Those are my go-tos all winter long. I can catch fish every single time I go out on one of those two colors without fail. So there you go. Short and easy. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you. Catch you next week.